Next we have Yuba Center Transit Report. Keith Martin. Is this for us?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight. I think this is probably the first time I had a chance just to give you the general overview of Yuba Center Transit, though you are all very familiar with our operation, but for those that are not here tonight, my name is Keith Martin. Are not aware of us too much. My name is Keith Martin. I'm the transit manager for Yuba Center Transit, and we have our organization has been around since 1975. Not everybody remembers that we started out as the Hub Area Transit Authority, otherwise known as HATA, back in those days, and began as a subsidized taxi program, actually. And today we have a 51 bus operation that provides a wide range of services. I know that you gave me about an hour tonight, so but I left my notes in the office, so it's going to be good for you because I'll probably be quickly going through these my thoughts here. So it's to your advantage that I forgot those behind. Our agency is a public agency. It's a joint powers agency formed by the 4 jurisdictions, the 2 counties in Marysville and Yuba City. Our current chairman is Councilmember Cardoza, and Councilmember Cleveland serving on our board now as well, and that Mayor Diball and Councilmember Buckland have both served on our board in the past, so I know you're all pretty familiar with it, and I think even Councilmember Harris has sat in a couple of times as an alternate, so here's a little deeper background for some of you, and for others you'll know very much what we do. We have always been a privately operated system. We contract currently with an international service provider, Transdev Services. They have about 98 employees that operate our service. They provide all the maintenance staff, the operating staff, dispatchers, supervisory staff, bus cleaners, the whole works. Yuba Center Transit has 5 employees, and we're responsible for the planning and monitoring, the finance and administration of the system. And we also, at the same time, provide those same services for the Regional Waste Management Authority under a separate service contract with between the 2 agencies. We have our office is based at 2100 B Street in Marysville. For those of you who've been around a while, that used to be a 7-Up bottling plant, and that we bought back in 1995 and moved into in 96 with 21 buses. Today we have 51 buses, and we operate buses ranging from 16 passengers up to 57 passengers seating capacity. So quite a lot has changed in that time period. We used to be over here on Pool Boulevard, right across the street from the CHP office, back when I first started here back in the day. The boring numbers are the budget numbers. Our budget for this next year, FY19, is about $7.4 million. And there are no other slides. That is the slide. So I give you an idea. I'm not a big slide person. $7.4 million of that, about 38% of that is funded through local sales tax funds that are provided by our member jurisdictions. About 31% of that comes from federal transit dollars for both urban and rural services. Dollars that would not come to this community if there wasn't a bus system at all. Another 16% of that of our system comes from the fares paid by passengers, and then another 13% from state transit assistance, and then the balance from other miscellaneous sources. We have $11+ million capital budget made up primarily right now, and that budget varies dramatically from year to year. Sometimes it's only $1 million. This time we have 3 major capital replacement projects that we have slated for the next couple of years, and to replace buses that will have long lived their full useful life in that time period. We started the service again as a taxi subsidy program, and now we have a wide range of services that includes 6 local fixed routes that operate from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on weekdays, from 8:30 to 5:30 on Saturdays, and then we have a demand response service we call Dial-A-Ride that operates the same service hours. And then we also have an evening Dial-A-Ride service that's available to the general public. The Dial-A-Ride service is available only for seniors and persons with disabilities, except during the evening hours until 9:30 at night. So the only service we operate in the evening is that service. There's no service on Sundays or major holidays as well. We also operate commuter service and midday service at downtown Sacramento. There's 22 schedules a day that serve the downtown central business district. And that service has been going now for since 1990, I guess, something like that. We've been providing that service, and it's very, very popular. And then we have 3 rural routes that serve the Yuba County foothills, the cities of Wheatland and Live Oak. Those 2 cities are not members of our organization, but they contract with us directly for those services, and the operating cost is provided by those jurisdictions. Over the last number of years, the services have not grown a whole lot because basically the last 10 years, there's been a kind of uncertain economic conditions here locally. So our service has been mainly focused on trying to catch up with what's happened over the last years before that. We had a lot of growth beginning about 1990 with this commuter service, in 1993 with a new fixed route system. And so in the last 10 years, we've been playing a lot of catch up with that, but we have not grown the system a lot during that time period. We have done a lot of things at that time period, though, to kind of modernize the system and to prepare for future growth. And that include we replaced and upgraded our fixed route buses. The top picture there is one of our newest fixed route buses, and they all now are all low floor design, so you walk right in from the curb into the bus. And then we also replaced and upgraded all of our commuter buses over the last 10 years. And you see the commuter bus down at the bottom there. That's our newest commuter bus. It just went into service this month, actually. And that's more of a tour style bus. It's designed for commuter operations, high back seats, reclining seats, overhead reading lights, the whole works. And those buses are now, all of our daily schedules now are served by these kind of buses. We've also have expanded park and ride lots. There's 2 new park and ride lots in Yuba County that we have coordinated that, but they're actually owned and operated by Yuba County. And then we also coordinated the expansion of the park and ride lot at Bogue Road, just south of Yuba City, working with Caltrans on that project. Again, that was done in the last 10 years as well. And then we expanded our facility in Marysville, which started out as a bottling plant. We've moved in there. And then now it is full capacity. We built it out in 2011 to where it is today. And then one of the big things we did recently is the Connect Card program. That's illustrated there on that. And the Connect Card is your electronic fare card, which allows you to load your fare from home or from your cell phone or anywhere else you want to do it, or any of the local sales outlets, and pay your fare electronically on the bus. And that helps to speed the bus up a lot in terms of processing dollars and cents at the bus store or issuing transfers, that sort of thing for people. It's really helped us in that regard, and it just really went full implementation just in July of this year. That's a 9-system regional program. It's coordinated through SACOG, or Sacramento Area Council of Governments, and the Regional Transit District in Sacramento, and we're a partner in that process. Looking to the future. Let's just talk about ridership trends a little bit, because I didn't make my scribbled notes versus I'm looking here right here. The ridership trends, we had through 2015, we experienced 24 of 25 years with ridership growth. In fact, we had 12 years that ended in 2015 with ridership records set every year. And as I'm in the industry, I know that's not normal. We had a tremendous growth curve in that time period. But since 2015, our ridership has been down 3 years since that time, and for a variety of reasons, but we've also seen the same thing happen at transit systems around the state and in the region and actually around the country, and sometimes much deeper than ours. And so over the last 3 years, our ridership peaked in FY15 at about 1.3 million passenger trips, and now it's a little over 1 million trips today going into this next year. A lot of that has to do with it's hard to know why people stopped riding the bus, but we know that the fuel prices were relatively low during that time period until recently, and then we've also seen some changes that we made policy-wise and service-wise in that time period that certainly led to that. And the Connect Card program itself, we've now done away with transfers, and so that a lot of times people would ride the bus more frequently with a transfer, and they actually would be laundering transfers through the system, riding more than they needed to ride to get to to try to make it into a round trip for one fare. So we know that some of this has to do with policy changes, but also has to do with the lack of population growth, and certainly in our Sacramento service, the downtown market for employment has diminished in terms of regional importance. And so we've seen that happen as well. And the state has been moving a lot of the jobs out of downtown, chasing office rent throughout the suburban area. And we've seen people call us up, I'm not riding the bus anymore, my office got moved to Elk Grove, or got moved some other place, and so that has had an effect as well. Looking to the future, we are certainly excited about what the future holds for us, but there's certainly are risk factors involved as well. We have no immediate plans for service enhancements. Our most recent transit plans that were approved in 2008 and 2015, both were pretty modest in terms of service enhancements and those kind of possibilities. Again, without a real commitment of funding available, we didn't feel comfortable making long-term service commitments. But we are working on some projects to improve the service for the current riders and hopefully to attract additional riders in the future. Most notably is our board has released an RFP this week, actually last week, that for a computer-assisted dispatching system and an automatic vehicle location system that would allow us to greatly improve the operating efficiencies in our dispatch office, while also providing real-time information for passengers, more like what people are used to if they're using a shuttle service or Uber or Lyft type of program, where you would know where the next bus is coming. You can get alerts as to when the bus is going to be there. Those things really are people are looking for that kind of a convenience factor. If you're in a 15-story office building downtown and it's 110 degrees or pouring down rain, you want to know the bus is late before you get out to the bus stop. So that helps them a lot in that regard. And so that's going to be something we put into place over the next year. We are also working on some other projects that would enhance the local bus stops and to try to improve those as well. A lot of our bus stops are pretty modest on ditches and roadsides, and trying to provide some passenger amenities at those locations would be beneficial for our passengers. We also know that in the future that a lot of growth has been approved or is planned, and if those projects come to fruition over time in a variety of places around the two-county region, it's going to put a lot of additional demand on transit services, especially when those projects are being located at places where there's no transit today. And so typically the first new house that moves in, there's not a lot of transit demand, but over time it starts to grow in that regard. For example, we currently have no local bus service in Plumas Lake. There's about 2,500, 3,000 homes down there, and we're going to be having challenges in that area at some point in time. But even if we don't see tremendous population growth in the region, we're also going to see demand for increased specialized services. As the population ages, whether it grows or not, we're still going to have more demand for that. And right now, our dial ride service operates at or near capacity during certain peak service hours now. So we know that it's only going to be more of a challenge in the future. Financially, the risk factors, there's really a couple of major ones we've been keeping our eye on. First, of course, is Prop 6 on the ballot this November. If SB 1 is repealed through that process, it will affect the transit system as well, as we expect to get about $1 million a year in SB 1 related funding from that program. And so if that money is not available, it would certainly have an effect upon our operation and our operating costs and our budget revenue sources. And then finally, and one that's just really coming down the line now is the Air Resources Board of California is proposing it's called the Innovative Clean Transit Initiative, which is now on the street for public comment as a September public hearing, and we expect that they'll be adopted by December of this year. This measure would require that all transit systems be converted to electric or zero-emission buses, whether it's electric or hydrogen fuel cell. That's really our choice. It's nice of them to leave us a choice. But the reality is that would affect the purchase cost as well as the fueling cost for those vehicles. And in fact, depending upon how this works out in terms of providing fueling capacity, it may require us to prematurely abandon our current site and locate elsewhere where we can develop those resources and infrastructure as part of that construction project. That's probably a $20 to $30 million project, which is currently unfunded, should that happen. For Yuba Center Transit, it would require us to start by at least no later than 2026 buying zero-emission buses and with all purchases. And by 2040, they expect that there will be no longer an internal combustion engine used in the public transit fleet in California. So those are the issues that we're facing and watching very closely. And of course, they will all have a significant impact on what we can do with the funds that are available to us. In summary, our system has grown dramatically over the last 30 years. We've really changed, and it's been quite a metamorphosis for our operation. But we also know that we have a long ways to go. It's still quite a lifeline type of service in most cases. Our operations run 30 to 60 minutes between buses, and that's typically what you see in the nighttime, in the middle of the night someplace, and other systems. So we know we're still a limited service, but we try to do the best with what we have in terms of the service operation, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll be very much involved with the city and the community in evaluating those services over time, because the mix of those services and the type of service we operate will always be subject to review and reevaluation. So I provided you with a collection of the service materials. Also includes the Connect Card brochure and our 10-year fact sheet that we provide to it's available to the public on an ongoing basis, kind of giving you where we come from, kind of a scenario there. And be happy to address any questions you might have. My contact information for the public is on the board up there. And we are always available, and we encourage anyone who has any comments, good, bad, or indifferent, to please contact our office, and we want to hear from them. Our motto is Safety, Service, Smiles, and we know we can't always achieve all three of those, but we certainly make it our best effort every day. So thank you for the opportunity to brief you on our operation, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions for Keith? Comments?
Through the mayor.
Yeah.
Keith, the zero emissions legislation is, I think, troublesome with ARB. It's going to be a cost factor that probably a lot of agencies won't be able to see through, especially in the short windows that we have to start doing the replacements. So looking at what the cost of the equipment is now, and then also looking at what the next probably 5 to 10 years look like, do you have any plans to maybe start introducing some of the technologies that are out there and being tested currently in California in relationship to autonomous vehicles?
Autonomous vehicles, no. In terms of for large-scale mass transit, the autonomous vehicles are still quite a ways down the line. The autonomous vehicles you see out there for transportation purposes are primarily for like shuttle type of vehicles, for campus shuttles. We see that with office campuses or university campuses. They hold 8 or 10 people, and they kind of run around a circuit. So we're watching the industry very closely, but those also will ultimately, there'll be electric vehicles as well, and it requires the same kind of charging infrastructure we see elsewhere. But we're aware of them, but at this point in time, there's not really a local application for them.
So secondary to that is, in the interim, looking at the possibility of contracting with services like Uber and Lyft or others that are out on the horizon that know that some of these challenges are going to be out there, and utilizing them under a contractual basis.
Yeah, we're watching that industry as well. Right now, the Uber and Lyfts are most commonly used in the major urban areas. We know that there's a presence here, but it's very limited, and they're not accessible to the disabled, and it's a real issue for them as well. And that's kind of where they've been getting in problems in a lot of communities. But we have there's a couple of pilot projects going on right now in the San Joaquin Valley to look at something related to more of the rural services. And so we're watching those closely as well, and we try to keep our ear to the ground on all those technologies. Right now, there's really not an obvious choice here locally for that purpose.
That's all the questions I have. Just a comment, and it's to staff and also to the contractor. I believe that this is one of the marquee operations in the region. It's run very, very well and very efficiently. So I thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Any other comments? Or
Through the mayor.
questions? Yeah.
Hey, Keith, could you please let the folks in the audience let them know the cost difference between the standard bus that we're driving today and what the new zero emissions buses are going to cost in the future?
Yeah, that's a scary one. The bus on top there that says Yuba City on it, by the way, it was I think that was out the door, license, tax, and everything for $435. The new buses that we're looking at, 35-foot bus, similar size bus, it's about $950,000. So that's what you're looking at. That would be fully loaded with warranties and sales tax and everything else. it's staggering. And if you went to that's a battery electric bus. If you went to a hydrogen fuel cell, it's about 1.3 million. We are looking at the possibility of, we're seeking some grant funding right now. We have an application in for federal funds for, it's called a low-no grant for low emission or no emission grants. It's a federally discretionary program, competitive nationwide. And we have an application that's pending right now at the feds for that purpose. We're also working with PG&E because they've recently had some programs that would require them to provide some of the infrastructure for, to get people into the electric vehicle business. And so we're working with them as well. All these things, of course, are very pricey and time consuming, but so we hope to hear by September or in September on the low-no grant award. And even as I told my board, even though we may get awarded this money, we may decide to walk on this money because if it's just not going to be something that we can handle internally. But we thought we'd at least get our name in the hat and see what happens. And we've been working with PG&E to try to evaluate that. One of the challenges, of course, at our current facility in Marysville is when you plug in a large number of buses, maybe the first 2 or 4 is not a big deal. You start charging in 15 or 20 or 30 buses, and we might have a brownout in Marysville for all we know. So those are the kind of challenges we deal with, and we don't know the answers to those until we get down the pipe of ways. And so it kind of puts us in kind of a risky spot. As my board knows, we don't risk much at Yuba City Transit. We try to know what we're doing before we start. And we don't lead with our faces too often. Not saying it never happens, but we still try to avoid that as much as possible. So that's what we are looking at the industry. We're watching very carefully. In fact, we're part of the group that's, I actually, one of the branch chiefs from CARB will be at our office at the end of this month. I said, come up and look at our site. We're a site that was developed as a bottling plant. We converted at a minimum cost. We have about probably $5 million invested totally in a facility that's supporting 50 buses. No one else has a facility that can do that with that kind of money. And so a brand new facility would cost us up to $30 million for a new facility. Come and look at our site, look at our buses, tell us, how would you do this if you were us? The problem is that it's not the staff that we're dealing with, it's the political part of this. And we do expect that this measure is going to be passed, and we'll be left to sort it out over time. So it's something that we're trying to push back as much as we can, and believe me, we're working that as hard as we can as well.
Great, thank you.
So
Sounds-
just one other comment, and maybe you could talk about the coming feature that you kind of skipped over. It might be that you're going to be providing Wi-Fi before too long.
All of our commuter buses are now equipped with Wi-Fi service.
That all of the fleet is going to
all
have.
13 buses are,
Yeah.
and the new buses came with that, and then we retrofitted the other buses with that as well. As we add the computer-assisted dispatching and automatic vehicle location systems on the new buses, they'll all have cell connections. It's just a matter of putting a modem in there, so we can expand that fleet-wide in the future as we choose to do so at a relatively nominal cost once you've gotten that far. It's, again, this is what people are looking for, and our commuters are burning through the gigs, I'll tell you that, as we monitor that. It's unlimited service, but it starts to choke them down about a certain level.
Yeah.
So we don't tell them that, but they're going through it.
Thank you. That's a great service.
Thank you very
to
much.
have.
Thank you, Keith.
Very much.